Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So hello everyone and welcome to Basics Discussion Circle and Meditation. My name is Travis. I facilitate this class. So with tonight's class, we'll be focusing mainly on like the mind-body or the heart-body connection. And we'll be really looking at that tonight. I usually mention this connection somewhat depending on the kinds of questions that are asked and things like that. But tonight's talk will focus mainly around that. So we'll get started with the meditation pretty shortly here. If it's your first time sitting with us, or if you'd just like to share how your day's going, feel free to say hi in the chat. It's good to keep in touch with each other so the isolation doesn't drive us too crazy. A little crazy can be okay though. So I think I want to read, in the Facebook group I posted this photo, just this photo of text. And for those of you who either don't have Facebook or just aren't part of the Facebook group, which is Dharmabum Temple Sangha. If you do have a Facebook but you're not part of the group, go check that out. Regular updates and whatnot. But I'd like to share this. I'd like to share this text. And it's something that I talk about often, but I really enjoy how they kind of phrased it here or put it together here. So it's titled, How to Feel Your Feelings. A thing that sounds obvious, but totally isn't. 1, an unpleasant feeling arises. 2, your mind launches into whatever inner story accompanies this feeling, such as I'm unlovable, I'm a loser, I resent myself, just for example. Stop, you're thinking your feelings. 3, redirect your mind away from these thoughts and into the sensations in your body. Mentally name them. My chest is tight, etc. 4, breathe into the feeling and sensation. Allow it. Cry, shake it off, whatever you need to do, as long as you're not in public. And 5, your mind will really want to go back into thought story mode. When this happens, redirect your awareness back to your body. Take deep breaths. Keep feeling into your body. Let the feeling exist and trust that it will leave. Observe it changing. Watch it move. Notice that you have survived. So I really like that. And for those of you that have been sitting with me for a while, you know that's generally like, if you have to go, you could go, and that's pretty much what I'm going to say for this hour period. But but that's pretty much along the lines of how I approach this practice. So when it's feeling these feelings, right? So when we have an emotion such as anger arise, right? We think I'm angry, I'm feeling angry. But do we really recognize what anger feels like? Or do we just have this mental storyline of that this is anger, that this is something that would cause me anger? So we experience a mental storyline. We're not really feeling the anger, but we're experiencing the storyline that we associate with anger. So when we I'll always say, to get out of our head, we get into our body. So we can get all stuck up in our head. So to get out of the head, we get into the body. And notice what anger physically feels like. Where is there tension? Where is there tightness? Where is there heat? Is it possible to breathe and focus in a way that allows this tension or this heat to dissipate? So just noticing this relationship between mind and body. The reason this is so important is most emotions and feelings and thoughts that we have that arise in the mind have their roots in the body, have their foundation set in the body. They actually form physically in the body first. And when the tension or that energy or that tension reaches a strong enough level, it kind of transfers into the mind and becomes a thought or a feeling. But it starts with a physical sensation, whether it's a positive or negative mind state. It starts as a physical sensation. And then through this lightning fast process, we recognize the physical sensation. We determine whether we enjoy it or don't enjoy it. If we enjoy it, it starts to manifest as a positive mental state. If we don't enjoy it, it manifests as a negative mental state or an unpleasant mental state. So we're working on getting in touch with the body in order to be more in touch with the mind. Because when we try to go straight for the mind, it's a mess up there. It's got however many years you've been alive of clutter and cobwebs and misconceptions. But the body's pretty straightforward. There's either tension or pleasure or an absence of either. It's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And through this practice of meditation, we can become more aware of these subtler and subtler levels of tension. And when we're aware of those, we have a greater degree of mastery over the mind, because we're able to notice the roots of our thoughts, where they're rooted in the body. And though we can't forcibly stop thinking a thought necessarily, we can intentionally relax the body. That's something that's within our control. And when we intentionally relax the tension that caused the mental state dissolves. In the case of an unpleasant mental state. In the case of a pleasant mental state, when we recognize in the body where that is, we can notice if there's any tension around that pleasant sensation and relax that. And in many cases, that pleasant mental state will actually increase, or its duration will increase. Either the experience of it will increase or it will stay a little longer, because we're not squeezing it out, we're not stamping it out with tension. So either way, this relaxation of tension is beneficial, whether it's working with a positive, an enjoyable or an unenjoyable mind state. So with that, I think we'll get started. Style of meditation we'll be doing tonight is the style we do most nights, and it directly relates to what we're talking about today, so I think that's useful. Anytime you notice, I'll just go through kind of the slightly more mechanical process of this style of meditation, but anytime you notice a particularly distracting or strong emotion come up, try and see if you can find it in the body. See if you can step back out of the mind, gently guide the awareness back to the body, and see if you can find where that tension in the body gave rise to that unpleasant mind state. Yeah, should be fun. So we'll get started. And a few things before we get started. If you're sitting on a chair, it's helpful to have feet flat on the ground, maybe not fully utilizing the backrest as it's easier to fall asleep. I like to have the tongue gently pressed up against the roof of the mouth and the back of the teeth. It prevents the buildup of saliva, which may not seem like it would be distracting, but it can be quite distracting. It's helpful. I like to kind of bring the shoulders up and back and then relax down into that. You get a pretty sturdy posture that way. Tucking the chin in slightly to open up the airways. That's pretty much it. If you're sitting on a cushion, that means you have a cushion at home and hopefully you know how to sit on it. So with that, we'll get started. Closing the eyes and taking 3 deep breaths slowly. Noticing if deep breathing feels good in this moment. And if it does, you can keep on breathing in this way. If it doesn't, you can switch things up. Maybe even deeper still or more shallow, heavier or lighter, in long and out short, or in short and out long. Just experimenting, seeing what feels the most energizing or calming for the body, and maintaining it for a while. And if that all seems too involved, you could even try posing the question in the mind as to what kind of breathing would feel best in the moment, and just watch how the breath responds. Though the experimenting is important, sometimes we're just not in the right place for it. And that's okay. And when you found a comfortable rhythm of breath, you can just maintain it. While you breathe in and while you breathe out, you can notice if you're holding any tension around the breathing process. If there's any tension in the throat or the shoulders or the face. Just consciously keep it relaxed as you breathe in and out. Begin to question what kind of perception you hold of breath and awareness. Do you perceive them as two separate things? What would happen if you perceived breath and awareness as one thing? One fluid activity. Without the breath, our awareness would fade away. Without awareness, you wouldn't notice the breath. So they can be thought of as one thing. This fluid experience. This aware breath. As you've maintained this aware breath, the next step is to begin to work it through the body. Starting with the abdomen, the area around the stomach. See if as you breathe in and out here, you can notice any patterns of tension, any tightness. And as you notice tension in the abdomen, see if you can imagine this aware breath flowing through it, dissolving it away as you breathe in and keeping it relaxed as you breathe out. With the stomach relaxed, gently allowing this breath awareness to float up into the chest. And if you want, as you breathe in and out here, you can imagine the breath coming in right through the front of the chest, straight into the heart. So you don't have to push or pull it from anywhere else. Breathing in, breath awareness flows into the chest, soothing the heart. Breathing out, it radiates out, opening the chest. with the chest spacious and relaxed, gently raising awareness up to the base of the throat. Repeating the same process here. Noticing any sense of tension or tightness or any constriction. And see if you can breathe through it, relax into it. Breathing in, opening the airways, soothing the throat. Breathing out, relaxing tension in the neck. And with the neck and throat relaxed, gently raising breath awareness up one last time into the center of the head. And as you breathe in here, you can imagine the breath coming in not only through the nose, but in through the eyes and the ears, in from the back of the head, down through the top of the head, gently flowing deep into the brain, relaxing mental tension. And as you breathe out, you can allow the breath to radiate out in all directions, softening the scalp and the forehead and the area around the eyes, unclenching the jaw. With the breath energy in the head, spacious and relaxed, you can allow this breath awareness to flow down from the head, flowing down the arms and out the hands, flowing down the spine and out the tailbone. Just allowing this breath awareness to slowly fill the body, down the legs and out the feet. And anywhere this breath awareness flows, you notice tension and you relax it, allowing the breath to flow through it, dissolving it away. And whenever you find yourself distracted by an unpleasant mind state, see if you can step back from it, not push it away, not grip onto it, but simply return back into the body. See if you can find its origin in the body. And when you find that cluster of tension, you can relax it. And sometimes it'll be in more than one spot. And then once you relax it, you can return to this full body awareness, repeating as necessary. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. Beginning to stretch if necessary. Very gradually opening the eyes. And reminding yourself that even though the eyes are open and you're engaging in the world again, you can still maintain a centered awareness within. Just because the eyes open doesn't mean the mind has to go flowing out with them. Just taking the next few moments in silence, reflecting back on that past session, and making note of any patterns of tension you identified as relating to a particular thought pattern or emotion. Make note of it for later and see if it's in the same area the next time you experience that emotion. In this way, meditation becomes a skill. So before I get started, I'm really curious if you would like to share. I would enjoy it if you shared, and it would help anyone else who's listening in as well. If you could share whatever emotion that you may have noticed coming up and where you felt it in the body. I think it can be really helpful to learn from other people's experiences in this practice. We all feel different emotions in different places. For some people, maybe, I always use anger because I feel like the most relatable example. Some people may feel anger as tension in the forehead. Others people may feel it as tension in their hands. But there's often some common threads, so it can be useful to share what you noticed in your meditation, so someone else can make note of it and see if it's true for them as well. I have a little, I guess you'd call it a journal, a little feelings journal, but feelings as in physical sensations as they relate to emotions. So I have a little journal, and it's very simple. It just says things like anger, and then it would say like shoulders, arms, hands, like in that order. The hands is when the anger arises, but I'll first start to feel it as tension in the shoulders. Disappointment, and then next to it, tension in the abdomen, in the gut. Anything like that. And then any sensations that go along with it, like a sense of floatiness or anything like that. But it can be really beneficial to make note of these things, because although we may all have different patterns of tension corresponding to different emotions, for us individually, that emotion will almost always have a similar pattern of tension, the different times that we experience it. And the cool thing is the way that this works, where the tension grows in the body and then becomes an emotion. When you get more familiar with how feelings physically feel, you can notice them before they actually arise and start to wreak havoc. So you can notice anger when it's still just tension in the shoulders, before it completes its circuit and then goes into this storyline of being victimized and being and any kind of like righteous indignation we have, just this anger arising, and then we're cursing and all of this, when really all we had to do was relax our shoulders about 5 minutes ago, and we would have not had to deal with it. It would have resolved itself. So it's really useful to learn our patterns of tension and then to be able to work on them more actively. We notice them throughout the day. We notice when our forehead or our shoulder is getting tense. We know what comes afterwards, and we can take a minute to take a few deep breaths and relax it. And then in the meditation, we can notice if we have just this subtle feeling of irritation just being subtle anger, we can then know, okay, well, my pattern of tension for anger is this. So let me see if there's some really subtle tension in that part of the body, which I wouldn't be able to identify if I wasn't looking for it. So creating a sensation or a feelings journal can be really useful. So Daniel shared, I felt some tightness in the chest around the heart. When I was able to relax that, my whole being felt better. Absolutely. The heart is one of those nexus points, those center points where all of these different sensations travel through. And it can always be a really good place to start. When we start the meditation, I always mention the forehead and the shoulders, because there's a good chance 90% of the time everyone has tension in forehead and shoulders. But the heart is a really important aspect. And if we only have a little bit of time, I would say forehead, shoulders, and heart is the best trio there. Roberto shared that frustrations hid in his shoulders. Yeah. The shoulders tend to carry a lot of our frustrations, our worries, our anger. One of the interesting things with these patterns of tension is they're habitual. Like when I talk about dependent origination and the chains of dependent origination, you have the contact with a sense. Like you smell something that's unpleasant. The feeling arises, an unpleasant sensation arises. And then the craving, the desire for that unpleasant sensation to go away arises. And then a storyline, the storyline of how we're going to get away from that unpleasant sensation comes up. And then the becoming, which is becoming, it's the word's bhavana. Another translation is habitual tendency. So then from that clinging, that storyline of how we're going to handle not having to deal with this unpleasant sensation that arose, is our habitual tendency, this drive to action. And then the next stage being birth, where we actually perform the action. So a lot of these sensations are related to our habitual tendency. What is it that we tend, after habitual tendency comes this birth of action. What is it that we tend to do? And then when we perform that action, it reinforces that habitual tendency. So for example, a common thing with like restlessness is you'll have tension in the legs. Because with restlessness, the habitual tendency is to get up and go do something. So you have tension corresponding to the muscles that you would use to perform that avoidance behavior, right? The reason why I feel, why my pattern of tension for anger starts in the shoulders, goes down the arms and into the hands, is because my habitual tendency for years when I got angry was to hit something, was to punch a wall or a person or whatever. So that habitual tendency created this pattern of tension. So sometimes if we're not sure where our tension is, we can kind of trace our steps backwards, think, what is it that I normally do when I'm feeling this way? And then see if you can find that habitual tendency, that behavior as tension in the body. So, yeah. Does anyone have any questions on any of this? I talked a bit longer in the beginning than I normally do, so I don't want to talk too much now. I'd rather just answer any questions, any burning questions anyone's sitting with. And while we're waiting for a question and there's that super uncomfortable pause for a lot of people, it's a great chance to notice what the pattern of tension for discomfort is, or anxiety, or whatever it may make you feel. So notice that and see if you can soften it. So the last thing that I'll say, unless there are any questions, is it can be really helpful to carry a little notepad around with you. Because sometimes in the meditation, it may be really hard to notice these kind of subtler patterns of tension unless we're really going through something, in which case if we're going through an issue regularly, it can be pretty prominent when we sit down to meditate. But in a lot of cases, it takes a lot of practice to become, with this sensitivity training, to become sensitive to these subtle patterns of tension. So one thing that can be really helpful is if we keep a little notepad in our pocket, and when we have something that triggers us, if we can have the mindfulness, the alertness to remember that it could be useful after we've calmed down a bit to write down where we're feeling that in the body. If we have someone cut us off on the road and we get irritated, we get angry, we can just kind of notice where there's tension. And then when ideally not when you're driving, but after you've parked, if you could make note of where the tension was in the body, the way that the tension may have spread throughout the body. All of these things can be really useful. And if we've found a pattern of tension in the body, we feel like we've isolated what this unpleasant mental state, where it is in the body, and we work with it and we relax that, and we're able to somehow completely relax it, and there's still that unpleasant mental state, don't feel discouraged. Oftentimes, an unpleasant mental state has more than one area that it's rooted in the body. And sometimes they're not even necessarily connected by this string of tension, such as the shoulders to the arms to the hands. Sometimes a pattern of tension with regards to an emotion or a memory or whatever, you might have some tension up here in the head, and then there might be some tension in your knee. But they're both contributing to that mental state. So don't be discouraged, but be encouraged. You figured out how to effectively relax part of that tension. Now the only thing left is to figure out where the rest of that tension is being held. So this is a continual practice. It's something that you can develop skill in. It's something you can improve with repetition, with commitment. And it's something that can make a profound difference with how we engage with our emotions and how we engage with the body. So that's pretty much all that I have to say for today. The only announcement really is that Natalie's class has resumed. It's no longer Tuesdays at noon. Now it's Monday nights at 7, evening video Dharma, and that's held through Zoom. The information's available on the website. Highly recommend checking it out. It's enjoyable. There's a guided meditation. Natalie guides a meditation. Then we watch a video from a well-known Dharma teacher, and then we have a discussion about it. So check that out if you can. Mondays at 7, evening video Dharma. I think that's pretty much it for new stuff coming up. And then also Sundays, this has been going on for a while, but Sundays at 2 is Bob's class, putting Buddhism back into mindfulness practices. That's also through Zoom, so it's a two-way discussion. So check those out if you can. Other than that, pretty much every other night, we have something going on here. The full schedule is available on the website. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, we do YouTube live stream from 7 to 8. Saturdays at 11 is Jeff's class, and then some Zoom meetings sprinkled in throughout. So thank you everyone for coming. We'll close with a transfer of merit, which is basically dedicating any sense of ease and well-being that you felt for this past session to anyone whom you know that's suffering, or to all beings in general. So if comfortable, please join palms. May all beings in all directions, without limit or exception, be healthy, joyful, and at ease. May we all be healthy, joyful, and at ease. Metta karuna mudita upekkha sangataya cetasa chaturi sambharatva viharati samba buddharo bhavena samba dhammaro bhavena Samba Sandharo Bhavena Sote Huntu Nirantaram